Most of us were taught that our history began with a tragedy. We were told that we are the descendant of the enslaved and the children of the colonized, people who could only be mentioned at the footnotes of history. But today, we are checking the science behind the pages of the book. We are looking at a story that existed long before the word of Genesis.
When I went to Egypt in 73 and Ethiopia in 73 in East Africa, and seeing for myself there was a much longer story here, and realizing that slavery is not the beginning of our history. Slavery is merely an interruption in our long and glorious history. The history before Genesis that we are not taught, therefore we're miseducated. And learning that things like Egyptology was really invented to separate the knowledge of Africans.
Now here is the kick. If history is a map, then the Nile is a key highway. If history is a building, then the Nile Valley is the foundation. But to own the building, you have to understand the architecture. The first step, or what we might call the institutional hack, was geography. They created a term called Sub-Saharan Africa to act as a fence. Why did they do that? Well, they wanted to keep the heart of the continent away from the genius of the Nile. It's called divide and rule, and it has been an effective instrument of manipulation since the days of old till today. But here is the story. The stones know no border. Yes, the border you know today are only recent.
I think of these as ancient Nile Valley cultures because at that time, of course, the modern borders that we think of as Egypt and Sudan don't apply to those ancient cultures. I'm an Egyptologist, which means that I work on the ancient cultures of what is today Egypt.
When we shift from Egyptology to the Nile Valley studies, the fence collapses. We realize that the pyramid weren't a Middle Eastern discovery. They were an African export, a southern genius that flowed north in the unbroken code of the African Brotherhood, and a message that will last to the end of time. But why does it feel so disconnected today? From Cape Town to Cairo, the story doesn't change. Why do we feel like tourists in our own home? It's because the face of the Nile has been repainted. The architect of the confusion knows that. The question is, do you?
We were Arabized, and the majority of the country became Muslim with the arrival of the Arabs in 600 something. And that is why to this day, I personally know a lot of people who say they identify as Egyptian. They don't identify as Arab.
To understand why some Egyptians do not identify as Arab, we must need to spend half a second on the term Arabization. What does that even mean? Arabization is the process of linguistic and cultural assimilation through which non-Arab population adopt the Arabic language, identity, and customs. While it began in the wake of the 7th century Islamic conquest, the shift was rarely a simple matter of choice. History shows that populations do not voluntarily abandon their ancestral heritage. Rather, Arabization was often the result of rigorous military and geopolitical maneuvering. Much like the European colonialism, which saw the displacement of indigenous people and the seizure of their land, Arabization was frequently driven by the structural dominance of a new ruling class.
If you look at the timeline of Egyptian history, 7,000 years old, 7,000 years of civilization, of different languages, culture, all of it, until the year 600, up until today, so let's say 1,400, 1,500 years, that is the time frame in which Egypt has been Arab. But it is the thousands of years before that that supports the claim of people saying that, oh, we are Egyptian, not Arab.
The world sees the 1,400 years old surface and ignores the 6,000 years old foundation. They have gentrified history to make the architect feel like a tenant. If the stone is African and the science is African, then the people must be African.
Why is it that we don't know it? And why is it that even the references that we are so preoccupied with in terms of the Holy Bible, we don't realize when we're reading the Holy Bible that the Holy Bible writers, the patriarch writers, were enemies of the Egyptians. And that we don't realize also that those writers copied so much from the Egyptians, especially the Ten Commandments and all of the major stories of the heroes, direct copies out of Egypt. They plagiarized the Egyptians, the Black Egyptians who they didn't like, and then they, not only that, but they turned around and demonized the very people they plagiarized.